Cha-ching, cha-ching. That's the sound of a cash register. But today, we're talking about chunking. C-H-U-N-K-I-N-G. If you've been struggling to sound more natural in your English conversations, this video is going to be a game changer for you. You'll learn 15 essential word chunks that native speakers use all the time, and you'll be able to use them in your everyday conversation. Then I'll give you a simple 3-step formula to help you learn and use these chunks effectively. So let's get started. My name is Herbert Lee. I've been a Toastmaster for over 40 years, a presentation coach for 35, and an English teacher for over 20. I research and develop courses and materials that make learning anything faster and easier. I've developed a method that teaches executives how to make effective presentations in less than 6 hours. For the past 20 years, I've developed courses to help English learners develop fluency with skills taken from neuroscience and research from high-level linguists. Now, let's get started. What are word chunks? Before we jump into our list, let's quickly define what we mean by word chunks. Word chunks are groups of words that native speakers use together frequently. They're like ready-made phrases that you can plug into your sentences to sound more natural and native-like. Learning these chunks is much easier than memorizing single words because they give you ready-made pieces of language to use in your everyday conversation. So here are the 15 essential English word chunks. As far as I know, this chunk is used when you want to share information but aren't completely certain about it. Here's the example. As far as I know, the meeting is scheduled for 2 p.m. tomorrow. As far as I know, the new policy will take effect next month. It turns out that you use this chunk when revealing new information that might be surprising. Here's how it's used. We thought the restaurant was expensive, but it turns out that they have a great lunch special. We thought the concert was sold out, but it turns out they released more tickets. The thing is, this chunk is perfect for introducing an explanation or a problem. For example, I'd love to go to the party. The thing is, I have an early flight in the morning. I'd love to help you move. The thing is, I've already promised to babysit that day. To be honest, use this when you want to express your true feelings or opinions. It can be used like this. To be honest, I didn't enjoy the movie as much as everyone else did. To be honest, I prefer working from home rather than going to the office. In other words, this chunk is great for clarifying or rephrasing something that you've just said. Here are some examples. The project is in its final stages. In other words, we're almost done. He's a nocturnal programmer. In other words, he codes all night and sleeps all day. More or less. You use this when something is approximately true or correct. Use more or less like this. More or less. I've been studying Spanish for more or less 2 years now. The renovation will take more or less 3 weeks to complete. On the other hand, this chunk is used to introduce a contrasting idea or perspective. It's very useful. For example, the job pays well. On the other hand, the commute is really long. This car is expensive. On the other hand, it's very fuel efficient. At the end of the day. You use this when you want to sum up a situation or give your final opinion. Use it like this. We can debate the details, but at the end of the day, we need to make a decision. We can argue about the details, but at the end of the day, we need to meet the deadline. It's not rocket science. This chunk means that something isn't very complicated. You hear this one used like this. Don't worry about the recipe. It's not rocket science. Just follow the instructions. Setting up this new TV isn't rocket science. Just follow the instructions in the manual. That's easier said than done. Use this when something sounds simple, but is actually difficult to accomplish. Easy peasy, here's how to use. My friend suggested I just ask for a raise. That's easier said than done in this economy. My friend suggested I just start my own business. That's easier said than done in this competitive market. I couldn't help but. This chunk is used when you couldn't resist doing something. I couldn't help but laugh when I saw the cat's expression. I couldn't help but notice how nervous the new employee looked on his first day. It's about time. Use this when you think something should have happened sooner. For example, it's about time that they fixed that pothole on Main Street. It's about time we started planning our summer vacation. Flights are getting very expensive. I see what you mean. This chunk shows that you understand someone else's perspective. This is an agreeable chunk. Oh, I see what you mean. That does not make the situation more complicated. I see what you mean about the importance of regular exercise. I'll try to make it a habit. Long story short. Use this when you want to give a quick summary without all the details. When you want to cut to the chase, you can say, long story short, we missed our flight and had to stay for an extra day. Long story short, our flight was delayed. We missed our connection, but we still made it to the wedding on time. Don't get me wrong. This chunk is used to prevent misunderstanding before stating an opinion. It can be used as a buffer, like this. Don't get me wrong. I like the design. I just think it needs a few tweaks. Don't get me wrong. I love my job. I just wish the commute wasn't so long. Before I get to the 3-step formula on how to put these chunks into your everyday conversation routine, get a copy of my free report, The 5 Biggest Mistakes in English Conversation. Now that we've covered these 15 essential word chunks, let's talk about how you can effectively learn and use them in your everyday conversation. I'm going to share with you a simple 3-step formula that will help you master these chunks and sound more native-like. The 3-step formula for learning English conversation chunks. Step number 1, identify and collect. The first step is to become aware of word chunks and start collecting them. When you listen to native English speakers, watch movies or TV shows, or read English content, keep an eye out and an ear out for these chunks. When you come across a new one, write it down in a notebook or add it to a digital list on your phone. The ones that you collect are more useful because these are the ones that you are hearing in your environment from the people that you are with. Much more useful than anything you can get from a book, particularly a textbook that doesn't understand your situation. The key here is to not just focus on individual words, but notice how words are commonly grouped together. For example, if you're watching a TV show and you hear a character say, "To be honest, I'm not sure about this plan," make a note of the chunk, "to be honest." Over time, you'll build up a personal collection of useful chunks that you can draw from in your own conversations. Step number 2, understand and contextualize. Once you've identified a chunk, it's important to understand its meaning and how it's used in different contexts. Look up example sentences and try to figure out the situations where this chunk would be appropriate. For instance, with the chunk, "It turns out that," you might find examples like, "We were worried about the exam, but it turns out it was easier than we expected. I thought she was angry with me, but it turns out that she was just having a bad day." By studying these examples, you'll start to understand that this chunk is used to introduce new information that often contradicts previous expectations. Step number 3, practice and personalize. The final and most crucial step is to practice using these chunks in your own speaking. Start by creating your own example sentences using the chunks that you've learned today. Then, try to incorporate them into your daily conversations or writing. For example, if you've learned the chunk, "At the end of the day," you might practice by saying, "At the end of the day, what matters most is that we tried our best." These are pros and cons to both opinions, but at the end of the day, we have to choose one. The key is to personalize these chunks by using them to express your own thoughts and experiences. This will help you internalize them and use them more naturally. So here's a bonus tip. Learn to create chunk challenges. To make learning chunks more fun and effective, give yourself chunk challenges. Choose a chunk you want to practice and challenge yourself to use it at least 3 times in real conversations during the day. This will push you to find opportunities to use the chunk and help cement it in your memory. In conclusion, learning English word chunks is a powerful way to improve your conversation skills and sound more native-like. By focusing on these ready-made phrases, you can boost your fluency and express yourself more naturally. Remember the 3-step formula. Identify and collect chunks, understand and contextualize them, practice and personalize their use. Start with these 15 chunks, but don't stop there. Keep your ears open for new chunks and gradually expand your repertoire. With consistent practice, you will find yourself using these chunks effortlessly in your everyday English conversations. That's all for today's video. Watch for more videos in this series. If you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more conversation tips. Remember to leave a comment below with your favorite word chunk or any questions you might have. Until next time, it's Herbert Lee, hoping this video has taken a chunk out of your English learning challenge.